Hello, everyone. I'm gonna call this video "What Should We Do?" As you know, there's a lot of things going on in the world right now that are homeland security related, and I've been struggling a little bit trying to figure out how do I facilitate discussion on this? How do we address these things? Since this is an online class, if this was a seated class, we would be kind of talking about these things in real time. But having an online class makes this quite a bit more difficult as far as dealing with real world issues as they're happening, that sort of thing. So I decided to make a video and just kind of talk about some of these things that are going on, and kind of give you guys some stuff to think about. If you want to contact me, I may put this in the discussion board. I haven't decided yet how I'm going to present this to you. But anyway, I wanted to kind of talk about some of the stuff that's going on in the world. So obviously the big thing is what's going on over in the Middle East with Israel and Hamas. So Hamas attacked Israel in a terrorist attack. Really brutal type of attack. Attacked Israeli civilians, people at a music festival. So obviously that got a response from Israel, and there's been some pretty brutal fighting both ways. Right now we're in the middle of a ceasefire. Hamas is releasing some prisoners. There's a prisoner exchange going on. Israel is releasing some Palestinian prisoners. Hamas is releasing some of the hostages that they took. So how long this ceasefire lasts, it's hard to say. But I don't think this is anywhere near being over. So what does that mean for Homeland Security? Well, obviously this is a foreign policy kind of thing, that the United States is dealing with. But it does have some direct correlation to kind of what's going on in America right now. Since that attack on October 7th, there's been a tremendous spike in anti-Semitic behavior, anti-Semitic rhetoric throughout the United States. Anti-Defamation League, I believe, said something like a 300% spike in anti-Semitic incidents, in the United States since then. And it's kind of happening all over the place. Obviously, college campuses have been getting a lot of the press right now, and a lot of these colleges are struggling really to try to figure out how to deal with those things. And in some cases, they were ignoring them until donors started claiming they weren't going to donate anymore. And some high-profile companies and law firms said they weren't going to hire people that were part of this letter that was signed by a bunch of student organizations, supporting Hamas and blaming Israel for the attacks. There's been a lot of protests, and there's been a lot of rhetoric, people saying stuff like, from the river to the sea, which has always meant, the elimination of Israel. Does everybody that is saying that realize that's what it means? Probably not, right? This is probably one of those situations where there's people getting caught up in kind of the fervor and what's going on, and people that may not normally have been involved in this sort of thing are getting involved in this. But as a Department of Homeland Security, what do you do about that? What do you do about this spike in anti-Semitic behavior? The Jewish people have been one of the most discriminated against ethnic groups throughout history. World War II with the Holocaust, right? There's been anti-Semitic behavior going on for a long, long time, and now it's at the forefront again because of what's going on in Israel and the Middle East. On the flip side of that, you also have instances where a young boy and his mother were attacked in Illinois for being Muslim, also because of what's going on over in the Middle East. So how do you deal with these related incidents, right? And how do you address those things? As Homeland Security, right? Those are things that you're going to have to, try to figure out. Like, what do we do? Because you have obviously free speech, right? People are free to protest. People are free to demonstrate, as long as they're not actively threatening someone. So what do you do about it? Or is there anything to do about it? How involved should the Department of Homeland Security, how involved should local authorities be in this sort of behavior? So something to think about. Obviously, what is the United States' role with Israel and what's going on in the Middle East? Like, that is all foreign policy stuff that does then impact what's going on Homeland Security wise. So then that brings us just to Hamas in general. And so reports are that Hamas spent 2 years planning this attack on Israel, and they've called for days of rage. They've called for other attacks. Are there sleeper cells within the United States of Hamas? Have they positioned people around the world? Odds are probably. Odds are likely that they have people in different places, different cells throughout the world. I'm somewhat surprised there hasn't been anything else happen outside of that, outside of the Middle East, as far as sponsored by Hamas. Then you also have Hezbollah that's been getting involved, fighting Israel on another one of their borders, right? So are there Hezbollah terrorists somewhere in the United States? Difficult to say, right? There very well could be. This could be a much larger type of operation. Is it? I don't know. But that's something Homeland Security really needs to be thinking about. And to their credit, they are saying that they're working on that, and they realize that that's a possibility. So then, moving to some other things, obviously this is a big deal, right? All this stuff that's going on in the Middle East, because you also have groups like Islamic Jihad that are involved. You have Iran, right, who sponsors Hamas and funds Hamas, right? So now you have this kind of geopolitical United States and the West and Iran and Europe, and like this whole, it's a big mess right now. But a lot of that is foreign policy stuff handled at the State Department level, right? Not necessarily Homeland Security direct, but obviously related. So then you have stuff like look over, I have some notes written down. So there was an incident earlier where a man in South Carolina drove through a fence at a nuclear power plant, right? Is that a terrorist act? You have the border situation where for years a lot of politicians were saying, well, the border is where terrorists are going to come through, right? They're going to come through undocumented through the southern border. And for the most part, for years, there was no evidence that was happening. There were people that were coming through undocumented, but not necessarily terrorists, right? And, before and in the past, terrorists, like people that did the 9/11 attacks, right? They came here legally. Now maybe they overstayed visas, and there's people that have done not been completely legal once they get here, but they all have come. They all had come through legal means. Well, the last couple of years, there's been an influx of people on the terror watch list that have been caught coming through the southern border. So let's see. Looks like around 170 that they've caught in the last couple of years. Before the last 4 years, you're looking at single digits of numbers of people on the terror watch list that have been coming through. So there is an uptick in people that are on the terror watch list that have been trying to come through the southern border and get in the United States. Now, how many other ones are there? No one knows, right? There's always this gray number in any kind of criminology, right? How many actual crimes are happening? Well, if they're not reported, right, then nobody really knows. There's always this kind of dark number that nobody knows exactly how many. They estimate 1.5 to 2 million, what they call gotaways, people that came across the border that weren't contacted by Border Patrol. So, how many of those were on the terror watch list? It's really, really hard to say. Um, there was an incident. ICE found a guy in New York City. This was back in October. That was wanted in Senegal for terrorist activity. He had come through undocumented through the border, and had actually been contacted by Border Patrol and then released, and then made his way to New York. And then they realized, oh my gosh, this guy is wanted for terrorist activity. So they went and got him, and are dealing with him now. There was the mass shooting in Maine that I'm sure some of you heard about. So you have all these homeland security related incidents all going on kind of at the same time. So what do you do about that, right? If you're Homeland Security, like how do you deal with all these various types of incidents that are going on, all kind of at the same time? And then you also have the cantaloupes that have recently been recalled due to salmonella, right? So that's also a Homeland Security issue, right? You have people getting sick, in multiple states. So you have, kind of all these types of incidents going on, and then you still have issues with transportation. You have issues with goods and services, moving throughout the country, right? So you have a lot of these kind of incidents all kind of going on at the same time. And so if you're the Department of Homeland Security, what do you do about that? Okay, so most or all of you are going to be maybe not in Homeland Security, but you're going to be in some kind of criminology positions, right? So you're going to have to figure out, like, what do we do about this stuff, right? These are things that are happening. What do we do? And you can't always just say, well, you need to arrest the people, or you need to do, like, how do you handle these kind of situations? How do you deal with this uptick in anti-Semitic behavior? What do you do about, the anti-Islamic or Muslim things that are happening as well, in addition to the anti-Semitic stuff? What do you do when you have politicians that are making inflammatory statements regarding the situation in Israel, right? What do you do about that? So you have all these situations that are all interrelated, and somehow the Department of Homeland Security has got to figure out, like, how do we do with these things? Like, how do you root out if there's Hamas sleeper cells here? How do you find them? What do you do about that? So I just want to take a few minutes and just kind of talk about, some of the things that are going on, right? And really, I'd like y'all really to think about, like, what do we do about this? Okay? What kind of policy, what kind of procedures, what kind of stuff does the Department of Homeland Security or local Homeland Security, right? Because we got Homeland Security at the state, the federal, local, like you have Homeland Security officials at all levels of government, right? What do they do about this? How do they work together on these things, right? Who's responsible for this stuff? Okay, so really think about, these issues that are going on, and try to develop some solutions. If you have ideas and want to bounce them off me, I'm happy to do that. I really wish we were meeting in person where we could have this discussion, kind of this back and forth, and I could get on the board and write all kinds of solutions down, and we could work through them one at a time. But remember, everyone kind of has their go-to position that they fall back on, right? You have it in your personal life. When something goes wrong, what is your first reaction to that? Because that's usually, that's your favorite. Like, that's the one you want to go to. But that's not always the best one, right? To deal with situations like this, you've got to look at the entire picture. You've got to look at it from above, instead of down here in the weeds, right? You've got to be able to see all sides of this thing. You've got to be able to look at all the various different parts of it and figure out how those all work together and what do we do about those, right? You can't just go with what you want to do automatically as your go-to, right? You've got to be able to critically assess, like, what is the big picture here? What is really happening? And what do we do about it? Okay, so hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. Good luck finishing stuff up through the rest of the semester. Please let me know if you have questions, and I'll see you another time.